Hi everyone, welcome to my week 4 multimedia discussion, private versus state foster care. In this presentation, we will review the similarities and differences of the foster care system and why it matters. The state and private sectors are both similar in some ways. First, they need to find placement for a child. Each organization is seeking to find a home for a child based on the child's need and behavior. They both have a common goal in finding a placement home for the child to ensure that the child is with adequate parents to sustain their needs and just to ensuring they're having successful growth for their life. Um, there's also a structural pattern in each organization that's very similar. They have to ensure that they're following rules and regulation to ensure that the child's placement is good for the child's safety and growth. They have to make sure that their foster care parents are licensed and pass a background check. They're also ensuring that the child has a social worker or a caseworker just to follow up upon the child. Um, Maintaining monthly visits or weekly visits, um, just trying to figure out if the child will be continuing in a foster care placement or if they'll be reunifying with their parents. Yeah, even though both organizations are similar in some ways, they're also very different as well. First off, for the private foster care agencies, they tend to have a lower caseload just because there's less children within the system and there's more workers, and they're able to have a great ratio that allows the worker to view the child on multiple occasions throughout the month, which is very different compared to the state. Usually, county workers have a very high caseload. Um, their resources are stretched very thin, therefore, sometimes social workers are not even able to see children multiple times on a monthly basis like the private sector. Um, this is also due to funding in the system. The private system has their private funding, plus they're also receiving state funding. So they have an opportunity to have more resources and use those resources for the child. So for the state, for state funding, their set amount, a set budget um, for each fiscal year, and they have to depend on that budget. It's if they're either going to be hiring more employees, especially more social workers. Will they be um, letting go people? How many children are in the system? Like they're still paying out foster care families as well on top of that. So those are the differences. Also, that we have to look at is how society views each system. I know, like, for the state system, it's very stricter. People look at it as, like, okay, well, if they're not implementing the correct policies and procedures, especially taking care of the welfare of a child, um, they look at it very harshly and more at the state system than the private system. Um, so that's like another aspect to look at. And the most important question of all, why does it matter? This matters tremendously just because the way how our current system is actually working, the state system is actually reaching out to private agencies just to subcontract so the state can save itself money because they're not having to put in as much resources and money into it doing them themselves, and they can just finance another agency or company to do it for them. And that's actually really important because you need to understand what's further going on in these private agencies. We have to make sure that they're still following the right rules and regulations that the state would follow. And you have to just make sure that they're actually doing all the background checks and just really implementing a strict structure just to ensure the safety for the child, because there is a lot of kids in the foster care system. So it's not, they're, how could I say it, like they're not like, oh, hey, let's just bring them here to this home. Hey, let's just take them here to some. Like, no, these are children. These children have to be taken care of for. They're the warden of the state, so they have to make sure that their health, safety, medical needs, everything, like, they just have to ensure all that stuff is good, especially because they're already coming from a home that they were either abused, neglected. They were taken out of home for a reason, so we have to ensure that these new homes that they're being placed in is good for their health and for their safety. So this is just very important because the way how the state system is working, we're just going into private agencies. So they do work upon each other, and they just have to make sure that they're just still supporting each other in the right way, especially for the children. And that concludes the PowerPoint. Thank you very much for listening.